Let me tell you something you might not know about Israel crossing the Red Sea.
Moses and Jello.
How long does it take to part the water?
How fast can you get 1 million people across a sea? Welcome to Flannel Board Friday, a series that is designed to take scripture-supported stories that you learned in Sunday school and hopefully fill in some gaps and maybe teach you something new. Let me read the story of Israel crossing the Red Sea and see what it looks like. Let's go to the flannel board. By the power of God, Moses led the enslaved Israelites out of Egypt with the hope of reaching a promised land. Well, after the Hebrews left Egypt, the Pharaoh became angry and summoned his army to go after them. And God led them to a place where a mountain was on their left and on their right. The Red Sea stood before them. God instructed Moses to stretch out his hand, and the waters of the Red Sea divided, allowing Israel safe passage. When God's people reached the other side, the Egyptians followed them. However, again, God commanded Moses to stretch out his hand over the Red Sea, and the waters engulfed the army and destroyed them. This is the classic Sunday school story.
Right.
But Joseph, how long does it take the Red Sea to part? Because he puts the staff over the water and boom, it parts immediately.
Glorious display. Well, just imagine you're standing there at the edge of the water as a recently freed slave, and you're waiting for Moses to do this wonderful miracle of parting the sea. And he stretches out his hand, and you just feel a slight breeze blowing on your ears. And nothing is really happening. Moses has led you to a dead end.
That's not quite as exciting as the movie.
No, it's not. Meteorologists believe that an eastern wind came in and blew for about 10 hours. And if this wind blew hard enough for 10 hours straight, that it would push the water back about 10 feet and create a dry path for these people to walk across.
It's been put to the test that a strong east wind could blow the water back, but how does it hold the water up? That's my question, because they crossed on dry ground. It's one thing to make the waters recede, but how do you make it stand up on end?
Yeah, so I think I know a little bit, I don't know anything about that. So the Bible talks about there being walls of water on each side as the Israelites are crossing. And Moses, in his wisdom, does something very scientific to remember this occurrence. He writes a song about it, and he called it the Song of Moses.
Genius.
Moses uses the phrase, a blast from God's nostrils. Then he also uses a word called fa-paw, right? It actually means like to congeal or to curdle. So the idea is that the water potentially could be like the consistency of Jello, and it would just be congealed or curdled as you walked by. The song that Moses would have written would have talked about the blasting of the nostrils and the congealed water.
Sounds like boogers.
If we only knew how that tune went.
The blast of your nostrils and the congealed and curdled water.
It's a no for me, dog. And that's where we got the Jello theme song from.
Right, from the Bible.
So we still have the problem of getting an entire nation across this sea with their Jello hallways and Pharaoh's army breathing down their neck. How long does it take to get at least 1 million people across a stretch of the Red Sea? Well, the Bible tells us that in the morning watch, when Pharaoh's army reached the sea, that they were already across. So that tells me that it was probably scooting step by step as the waters would part and recede, that the people would just be right there on top of it, so that they would all cross over in probably about 10 to 12 hours. They're all across, and here comes Pharaoh's army right in the morning watch. So it took all night for the sea to part and all night for them to get across. Guys, thank you for joining us for this episode of Flannel Board Friday. Be sure that you join us next week, because I'm going to talk about a teenage boy who carried around a human head for 15 years.